Hello, it's Amy Pearson from beingamytheblog.com, and I'm here with another YouTube video wanting to share some things that have helped me evolve and have helped me be happier in the world. I mentioned last week that this is an experiment, and the experiment continues. So today, I wanted to talk about this concept called ego death. I looked it up on Wikipedia, and I noticed that the definition can get pretty esoteric. It's talked about in a lot of different philosophical schools, but the basic gist is that it's this idea that we have this concept of ourselves. We have this belief about ourselves, and in life, we can experience circumstances that come from outside of us or come from inside of us that pretty much blow up our concepts of ourselves and show us that we're not who we think we are. And this process, understandably, can get pretty intense. It really marks it can be a very painful time to have to sort of reevaluate your concept of yourself in the world. But this experience, these ego deaths, and many of us experience many ego deaths in our lifetime, not just one. But the ego deaths that we experience throughout our lifetime are really very powerful experiences that help us evolve. And so I wanted to kind of describe, really take you on a tour of significant ego deaths that I've experienced in my lifetime, to give you a flavor of what they can look like and how they can change you. And my intention is to help you feel better if you're experiencing an ego death in this in this current time. We've got a lot going on in the world. We're dealing with a pandemic and all that comes with that in terms of lockdowns and masks and vaccines, and on top of that, just so much racial injustice that we're seeing in the world, the Black Lives Matter violence that we've seen against Asians, and then we're dealing with just a lot of a difficulty in really being able to trust the information that we're getting. And I would add just a lot of really shitty things going on in our government, if you're an American, and just a consolidation of power and control in the hands of a lot of just really wealthy people. So a lot of you are probably experiencing some stress and anxiety around that, and it may be leading you into an ego death, and you're probably feeling pretty anxious and uncomfortable. And I just wanted to reassure you that ego deaths are a part of being a human. It's a normal human experience, and they are really actually pretty profound when it comes to your evolution as a human being. In order to evolve, and that's really, as I continue to do more and more sort of work and spiritual work, I'm really coming to see that, and maybe this is obvious for many of you, is that our purpose here on this planet is really to evolve. And what that means is to change and to grow and to learn. And ego deaths are one of the most profound ways to change and evolve and learn. And it's really up to us to be open to change. Many of us are afraid of change, but change is what creates disruption that allows us to see things in a different way and to learn and to evolve. And I imagine that if you're here watching this video, you are interested in evolving and becoming more of an authentic sort of representation of who you really are. And on top of that, you want to be happier. You want to feel better in your life. You want to wake up and be excited about your day. And so all of this is linked to having ego deaths. And so my intention is hopefully to help you feel better about that, and hopefully to convince you to be open to change. And even though it's scary, right? And often we don't like change because we don't like unknown things. And all of that for the ultimate purpose of being a more authentic person and in this world and being happier. In order to evolve, you have to be open to change. So I wanted to take you on a little tour of some of my ego deaths over the years. The first ego death that I can remember happened, I would say about 7 years after I got married. So I got married young. I was, I believe, maybe just turned 21 when I got married. I might have been 20. I'll have to think about that. But I had this idea that I was that my husband was really responsible for my happiness. I think that came from just sort of cultural narratives about women, and the wedding ceremony really is this idea that the bride belongs to the father, and the father gives the bride away to the husband, and then the husband is the one that is now responsible for this bride. And I remember when I got married, my Ron and I sat down in front of the minister, who happened to be my uncle, a very conservative Baptist minister, and he wanted us to talk about our vows. And the one vow that he really insisted upon, if he were to officiate our wedding, was this idea that I needed to obey my husband. And I remember, even though I was 20 years old or 21 years old, I felt very resistant to that. And so we came to a compromise, and the compromise was that he would say that he would obey me as well. And even though I was resistant, and I did have awareness that that didn't jive with me, I think I internalized this idea that, my husband was the one who had the responsibility to, to help me be happy in my life. And you kind of know where this is going, right? There were all kinds of reasons for me to become just unsatisfied with my life. And the more unsatisfied I got, the more resentment I held towards my husband, until it came to a huge, ugly head. And you can read the book if you want to learn more about that situation. But ultimately, what I learned is that my husband is not, in fact, responsible for my happiness. This whole time, I blamed him, and I really saw myself as this piece of property. And as long as I was maintaining myself in the right way, so that I could be, so that he could be satisfied with me as a piece of property, then he owed me my happiness. And I realized that I had been believing this and really attaching my identity to this dynamic, this really unhealthy dynamic. And then eventually, after a lot of chaos that I had created because of my resentment, I had this insight that he wasn't the one that was responsible for my happiness. It was actually me. And so that was my first ego death. And the misconceptions that I carried over those 7 years of marriage really created a lot of misery on my part and on my husband's part. And once I was able to recognize that I had this idea that really wasn't true. I had to learn how to be in my marriage in a different way. And ultimately, since it's been, I think, 26 years now and we're happily married, ultimately that served me. Although in the process, it was really painful for me to come to that awareness. I'm not sure how much time I have to go through all my ego deaths, but let's see. The other ego death that I had was had to do with being a mother. I really struggled to get pregnant. Ron and I struggled to get pregnant, and we went through 7 years of infertility treatment until ultimately I was able to give birth to twins. And I remember that I had this idea of the kind of mother I would be. And since I had tried so hard and we'd invested so much financially, so much emotionally, physically for me with, all the kind of medical interventions, the shots, the daily shots, the blood draws, the procedures. I invested so much into it that I was really convinced that I was going to be a very content stay-at-home mom. And when my twins came into the world, these newborn infants, I was pretty shocked at just how difficult it was, obviously, right, with twins. But I was really shocked. And as the months kind of went on, I was really surprised and ashamed that I really struggled and I wasn't enjoying being a mother. And so one of the things that I had to do really was to get some help. And so we hired someone to come and help me take care of the twins when they were infants. And then that was about the time when I got into life coaching and I felt that was a very rewarding career path for me. And I was very excited about that. And so as I was building my life coaching career, I was able to get some help. But I really had to work through a lot of these ideas that I had about myself as a mother. I had to work through a lot of shame around not being the kind of mother that I thought I would be. And that really forced me to take a look at myself and forced me to accept myself and the kind of mother that I was, even though my idea of who I thought I needed to be as a mother didn't match up with the real me. I had to face that. And then I had to look at what I was ashamed about, and I had to question my stories about myself. And eventually, even though that was painful, it helped me to accept myself and be the authentic mother that really in the long run is what I wanted to be. And now, the twins are 12, actually 13, and I have a 10-year-old, and, things are not perfect, but I really enjoy my role as a mom, and I'm really happy in that role. Thanks to all that work that I was really forced to do. And I think, because I had twins, and I also lost my mother 3 months before the twins were born, and there was a lot of external things going on. And I think because I had the stress of the loss of my mother, and because I had the stress of not just one baby, but two, and my son was just not having it. He was a very quote unquote high maintenance infant. And I think that stress really forced me to have to look at those things and get help and reevaluate my idea of what it meant to be a mother. I think maybe if I had one child, my mom was there to help, and and that child was, what they would call an easy baby, maybe I would have just gotten through. But because I had so much stress, it really was a gift in the long run, because it really caused me to reevaluate some things that led me to a certain level of self-acceptance that allowed me to be the kind of mother, really mother in my own way, that leads me to feeling happy in the role. The next ego death, I would say maybe this one was possibly around the same time as the birth of my twins, was the death of my mother. So that was a pretty unexpected loss. She was struggling with breast cancer, but she had gone through all of her treatments and she was doing great. Her hair was coming back, her energy was coming back. And they had, the doctors had encouraged her to try this drug that I don't even think now was FDA approved. That was supposed to help her because she had a certain type of breast cancer that was a little more aggressive. And so this particular drug was supposed to prevent that cancer from coming back or being as aggressive. And so she was willing to try it. And unfortunately, what happened was that drug stopped her heart. And so she died very suddenly while I was pregnant with the twins. And that, was hands down the most traumatic thing I think that has ever happened to me, because my mom was my cheerleader and my best friend and someone that I talked to every day. And what happened was that I became a mother at the same time that I lost my mother. And this really caused me, kind of in the same vein as the awareness that Ron wasn't responsible for my happiness. What eventually happened after I lost my own mother was that I had to realize that I needed to be my own mother. I lost a mother and I became a mother. And I had the awareness out of that I had to mother myself. And also that I had to be my number one fan. My number one fan was my mom, and I lost her. And so eventually what happened out of that is that I realized two things that changed my way of being in the world. One was that I couldn't rely on my mother anymore to be my fan. I had to be my fan. And I had to mother myself. And what that meant was that I had to take care of myself. I had to be responsible for my well-being, especially because I had these two infants that needed me. And so I needed to really take my own self-care seriously. And so that was really, this idea that it was very similar to the idea that I had to be responsible for my happiness. The next ego death that I'll just touch upon is it had to do with my role as an entrepreneur. So I became a life coach around the time when the twins were born, I would say, and I guess they were maybe a year or two. Yeah, they were a year when I started training. And I'm someone who enjoys taking action, and I saw that I was gifted in the coaching, that I enjoyed it. I felt passionate about it. And because of that, I really ate, slept, and what is that expression? I just spent a lot of time on it. And so, of course, I was able to get really, I think, competent at it quickly because I was so passionate about it and I was taking so much action and I was practicing with so many clients. And so what happened was that became a big part of my identity, because up until that point, I wasn't really able to hold a job. I wasn't someone who enjoyed 9 to 5. Every time I got a job, I usually left within the year, because what I realize now is that I just didn't like working for people. And I was really an entrepreneur at heart. But what happened was, being an entrepreneur and being a coach and being able to do those things well became a huge part of my identity. It made me feel good about myself. And so I kind of jumped into that, wholeheartedly. And there were a lot of good things that happened from that. But what also happened was that because I had attached it to my worth, I got super wrapped up in it in an unhealthy way, where I just let it get out of control. I don't really know the right way to explain it, but I attached too much of my worth to it, so that eventually, even though I was helping people and using my skills and putting great material out there, what also happened what also happened was that I stopped I stopped making it about being helpful in the world, and it started to become enmeshed with my sense of self-worth. And so if I had a launch and it didn't go well according to my goals, then I would start to make that mean things about me and my value. If I wasn't experiencing the kinds of results that my colleagues were experiencing, I would make that mean things about my worth. And I really had to work through this a couple times in a couple rounds. In fact, just recently, I tried to go back and do a lot of things the old way in my business. And, it's understandable that it didn't go well because I was just going back to the old model. And so what I had to really, eventually what happened was that I stopped trying to do things the old way, and I just listened to my heart, and I just started to do things that felt good to me. And eventually what that meant was no more launches. They're exhausting. No more putting tons of time into things that don't make me feel excited and passionate, and really, thinking about what feels good to me and is also of service to my community. And so now, as a result of that, I may not be the successful coach that I used to compare myself to, but I'm so happy and I'm so alive, and I wake up every day. I know this is cliche, but this is true. I wake up feeling really excited about my day and the things that I get to do and the work that I get to do. So I've been able to structure my days now in a way that makes me feel super happy and content, and also allows me to be of service and use my skills and also learn new things. And I've really let go of this idea that I have to have a certain kind of success, because I used to think my being successful looked like a lot of other things that just weren't an authentic representation of myself. So I know this video is long, but I wanted to give you a tour of some of my ego deaths. And those are not all of them, but I've experienced many, and they have all been painful. And some of them have come from insights that happened because I just had created a lot of chaos out of just misunderstanding of who I thought I needed to be based on, those expectations that are imposed upon us from society or from our parents, from our culture, and believing that we had to be that. But some of them came from things that happened outside of my control. The death of a mother, right? The birth of my children. So they can come from in a lot of different ways. But what I want to say is that thank you to those ego deaths. Really, they've all been so painful. And you'll read in the book, I really made a lot of mistakes. And some of them, you might think are unforgivable mistakes. But all of those mistakes, because I was able to drop the shame around them and really just look at them and be open to them, have helped me to be the person that I am right now, and to be someone who is happy, like authentically happy. And so that's what I wanted to share, was that ego deaths are not a bad thing. They can be painful. And if you don't open yourself to that change, you could really lead yourself into a lot of just misery, kind of holding on and grasping to these identities about yourself, right? And so the real key here is to allow yourself to be open to changing, and to be open to see yourself in a different light, and to be open to accepting yourself, right? I remember another one was after I stopped drinking alcohol. And that was a really interesting one, because I had this idea of myself as a person who performed a certain way socially. And after I stopped drinking alcohol, and it's been, I think, 7 years now, I realized that I do not enjoy socializing with large groups of people. I don't like to go to parties. If I speak on a stage, I'm the type of person who will want to, leave right away. I don't want to mingle. I really struggle with small talk. And I don't really have issues quarantining. I'm like one of those who's like, I'm fine being here alone in the house. I don't know about my children, but I can do that fine because I'm such an introvert and I kind of border on being a hermit. But I didn't realize that about myself because every time I drank alcohol, I changed into a different person. I was just way more social. And I think I drank alcohol so that I could change into a different person. But what happened was I realized after I stopped drinking that I wasn't that person. I was a different person. I was an introverted person, shy, someone who enjoys doing things that might be labeled boring. And I had to become okay with that. It was a little disappointing, honestly. I kind of wanted to be one of those really bubbly, outgoing, sort of entertaining, funny people. That was my idea about myself. But I can be that, but that is really not me. I am someone who is quite introverted, and I actually enjoy that. And so that the giving up of alcohol was difficult. It was a struggle. It's not easy to give up something that had been kind of a crutch for me, an emotional crutch for me. So eventually, though, it was a huge gift because now I've learned to accept myself as I am. So ego deaths, they are painful, they can be, but the key is to open yourself up to change, to be receptive to learning who you really are. And those ego deaths allow us to uncover new layers of who we really are. And they are beautiful opportunities. So if you're struggling right now, if you can relate to what I described, if you feel like you're experiencing something similar, just know that that is a part of the human experience. You're evolving. Congratulations. It's not easy. It's painful. And I'm sending you so much light. But just know that at the other side of that, if you're receptive to change, if you're willing to drop the shame that comes from thinking you have to be a certain way and just integrate your whole self, then these ego deaths are these beautiful opportunities for you to grow and be a more authentic more authentic version of who you really are. And that is exactly how you become the person who wakes up every morning excited about your day, is because you are living your life true to who you really are. When you're not doing that, it's uncomfortable because you make all kinds of shitty decisions about how to spend your time based on your ego and these misguided ideas of who you think you're supposed to be. So ego deaths, welcome them. They're wonderful opportunities, and I just want to send you light if you're someone who's experiencing these right now. I have a feeling many of us are, but just know that they are these beautiful opportunities to grow. And on the other side of that growth is the happiness that you seek. I'm Amy Pearson. I'm over at beingamytheblog.com. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe or give me a like or share me because I think I'm enjoying these and I think I'm going to keep going. And I would really love, and please feel free to send a comment. Anyway, take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your week, and thanks for watching.